Good morning and welcome. You're tuning in to the Stylo News Intelligence Update. I'm your host, and today we're bringing you a comprehensive explainer of the current security landscape across the European continent. Our goal here is simple: to give you a clear, factual, and strictly unbiased look at the patterns of events shaping the region right now, from the local level all the way up to the international stage.
For the record, today is August 11th, 2026. What you're about to hear is our Europe Situation Report. By stamping this exact time frame, we make sure our open-source intelligence baseline is firmly grounded in the verified facts available to us at this very hour.
Now, before we get into the analysis, it's important to know exactly where our data comes from. This explainer is powered by ProWave AI, the developers behind the Stylo Intel Ops engine. It's a remarkable system. It synthesizes information from over 250 global sources, covering more than 20 languages, all in under 60 seconds. What that means for you is situational awareness that's not only lightning fast, but rigorously objective and completely free from any partisan influence.
Here is our roadmap for today's briefing. First, the Baltic region security assessment. Second, the northern flank threat picture. Third, Southern Europe and the Mediterranean. Fourth, the Ukraine conflict and diplomacy. And finally, our outlook and intelligence sources.
Let's move right into Section 1, Baltic Region Security Assessment, Border Hardening and Hybrid Probing.
When we look at the Baltic region and Poland, our intelligence indicators are currently prioritizing asymmetric threats over traditional military maneuvers. The data shows that Baltic defensive preparations are really accelerating right now. For example, independent reporting tells us Latvia is out there installing border radars, physical barriers, and counter-drone systems along the Belarus border, aiming to wrap that up by the end of 2026. At the same time, Lithuania is actually prepping key bridge networks for potential demolition along likely approach routes. It's a calculated hardening of infrastructure. These frontline states are clearly prioritizing denial, early warning, and defense against infiltration, rather than mobilizing for some immediate, large-scale conventional war.
So, based on the last 24 hours of reporting, there is absolutely no evidence of Russian force concentrations, mobilization indicators, or bridging equipment being staged that would suggest an imminent conventional offensive against NATO territory. The risk of a direct ground invasion? It remains low. However, the asymmetric and cyber threat is assessed as very high. Why does this matter to you? Well, because foreign intelligence proxies are actively targeting the very systems we all rely on, things like European ministries, rail networks, and logistics. Their goal is to create political chaos without ever firing a single shot.
And that brings us to a specific, highly credible warning indicator. Defense officials over in Lithuania have raised the alarm about possible false flag drone strikes against Baltic critical infrastructure. And they're warning these could potentially use captured Ukrainian uncrewed aerial vehicles. This perfectly aligns with a broader pattern we're seeing of sub-threshold disruption. Just for context, we've been closely monitoring recent incidents like the drone and explosive event at Germany's Leipzig-Halle airport. It's clear evidence of a preference for ambiguity and psychological signaling over actually seizing territory.
Moving on to Section 2, Northern Flank Threat Picture, Multi-Domain Coercion.
Shifting our view northward to Scandinavia, this whole region has emerged as an active zone for testing the alliance's threshold of response. We're observing a very steady rhythm of low-cost, low-signature probing tactics. A prime example of this would be the recent arrests linked to unauthorized drone flights near highly sensitive Swedish intelligence and naval sites, like the one at Leuven. These deniable activities suggest the northern battlespace is being actively shaped through reconnaissance and intimidation, which keeps regional security forces in a constant, draining state of alert.
At the same time, we're keeping a close eye on strategic posture adjustments right across the border. There are open-source claims pointing to as many as 115,000 Russian troops regenerating near the Karelia region. Now, as an objective intelligence service, we have to point out that this is single-source reporting, and it definitely requires further corroboration before we accept it as fact. But more tangibly, intelligence shows Russia's 6th Air Army is reprioritizing its northwestern assets toward counter-drone defense, directly following long-range strikes on Leningrad port facilities. It's a fascinating illustration of how operational realities are forcing decision-makers in Moscow to balance protecting their homeland rear areas against their desire to project coercive leverage toward Finland and Norway.
Next up is Section 3, Southern Europe and Mediterranean Indirect Pressures. Pivoting down to the southern flank, we categorize this theater as a medium-level, gray zone threat environment. While the heavy kinetic activity is concentrated to the northeast, continued Russian missile and drone strikes on the Ukrainian port of Odessa are having a direct, cascading effect on maritime security here. These strikes severely complicate the operational picture for neighboring NATO members, specifically Romania and Bulgaria, and they certainly elevate the risk of an accidental spillover right into the Black Sea domain.
We're seeing these vectors of indirect pressure in the south manifesting in three main ways. First, we've tracked reports of some anomalous incidents, including a drone or explosive event near a compressor station on Bulgaria's Trans-Balkan gas pipeline. Second, analysts repeatedly point to the consolidation of the Africa Corps, that's the group formerly known as Wagner, in Libya and the Sahel. This gives them a strategic foothold to exploit regional instability. And third, having that presence offers the capability to influence Mediterranean migrant flows, which creates really complex, destabilizing narratives that Southern European governments then have to manage. None of this points to conventional war, but make no mistake, it is a steady, deliberate application of pressure.
Moving to Section 4, Ukraine conflict and diplomacy, escalation and impasse.
Turning our attention to the central conflict zone, we have to strip away the emotion here and look strictly at the military facts on the ground. Right now, they point to a prolonged impasse defined by reciprocal escalation. Russia is sustaining a high-volume campaign of mixed ballistic missile and UAV salvos. Their aim? To saturate Ukrainian air defenses and strike vital logistics infrastructure. From an intelligence perspective, watching these strike patterns is absolutely crucial. They're serving as a real-world template for the kinds of coercive operations, infrastructure disruption, and air defense exhaustion tactics that adversaries could eventually deploy right up against NATO borders.
Now, a really crucial point here is understanding the diplomatic sentiment. When we analyze open-source channels and official statements, a very clear picture emerges. Russian decision-makers are maintaining unchanged, maximalist demands, basically insisting that what they perceive as the root causes of the conflict, like NATO expansion, must be addressed before any talks can even begin. On the flip side, Western strategy is entirely focused on ensuring continued combat capability, specifically through resupplying air defense interceptors. And public sentiment? Well, as measured across various OSINT platforms, it is overwhelmingly pessimistic. The data simply shows no viable near-term ceasefire mechanism or off-ramp without major political concessions, and frankly, neither side is currently willing to make those.
Finally, Section 5, Outlook and Intelligence Sources, Strategic Projections. As we move into the predictive phase of our explainer, it is vital to reiterate that our projections are grounded strictly in today's verified open-source data streams. Transparency is paramount for us. Our intelligence is gathered from a highly diverse array of international and regional news outlets, places like ERR News in Estonia and LSM in Latvia. We're actively monitoring real-time social media sentiment across key hashtags and analyzing satellite imagery of critical nodes like the Suwalki Gap and the Rzeszów-Jasionka logistics hub over in Poland. This comprehensive collection is what allows us to identify broad, common viewpoints and isolate any anomalies.
So based on all that data, we've identified the most likely near-term events you should be watching for. We do not forecast a sudden, overt kinetic war. Instead, expect a continuation of sub-threshold disruption. First, anticipate ongoing cyber reconnaissance and intrusions targeting European transport and defense ministries. Second, keep an eye out for targeted disinformation campaigns carefully timed to disrupt political elections or NATO military deployments. And third, remain vigilant for deniable acts of infrastructure sabotage and continued drone provocations, especially around those key logistics corridors. The principal danger moving forward isn't a deliberate invasion. It's the very real risk of rapid miscalculation stemming from these hybrid actions.
And that concludes our Europe Situation Report for this morning. This explainer is designed to cue you into the broader trends shaping the continent right now. But I want to leave you with a critical question to consider. As cyber intrusions, disinformation, and sabotage continue to blur the line between peace and conflict, is the real danger of future war or the fact that a new kind of war has already begun without us fully noticing? Now, for a much deeper, AI-powered intelligence analysis covering the past 2 weeks of events in this region, we highly encourage you to listen to the full Stylo News Intelligence Update Morning podcast. You can find it on your favorite podcast channel or simply by following the link on this post. Thank you so much for your time and your focus today. We invite you to subscribe to Stylo News to get unbiased, AI-powered global intelligence on demand at www.stylonews.com. Good day.